Well, hello. What I love about the fall is like the simplistic things you can have that just make you feel the season. And for me, it is this simple pumpkin applesauce cake. You know, I love an applesauce cake. It has the warm spices, but what I love even better is an applesauce cake is so multi-versatile, you can change it up and make a pumpkin cake with it. And that's what this is all about. So it's using what is kind of in season, but where of course you can always use a canned pumpkin puree. You do not have to puree your own. You can use a bought-in applesauce. You don't have to grab it from the freezer. Whatever works for you. So we are gonna make a really simple pumpkin applesauce cake, and it has a great frosting on it too. It's kind of one of those things you can use for like a celebratory meal or a holiday meal if you want to, but it can also just be a weeknight or weekend cake, which we should make weekend cakes a thing. Every weekend deserves a cake. So we're gonna start with pumpkin, and I'm gonna use what would be 1 can worth, because I hate when a recipe uses like half a can, and then you have that other half, and you're like, what am I gonna do, freeze it? Gonna try to make something? No, we're gonna use the whole can. And to that, we're gonna add some eggs. Really simple here. What I love is pumpkin kind of is that great thing where by itself you don't always think, oh my gosh, pumpkin has a ton of flavor. But when you add the right ingredients, it really kind of brings out the pumpkin and it adds more delicious flavor to it, adds those warm spices. So I'm also gonna add my applesauce. Now I home can applesauce. You know I love to do that. And I don't actually can it. I freeze my applesauce because, well, it's how I grew up and I think that's just, you know what? We do the things we're used to doing. And to me, I love frozen applesauce because when you pull it from the freezer and you let it thaw, but still has some of those icy crystals, it's kind of the best. So to this, if you follow my recipes ever, you kind of know I love molasses. My grandma instilled in me this love for molasses. We often use sorghum actually, but same thing. I mean, not the same thing, but they can be used in place of each other. So I'm just gonna add some molasses because you can see how I measure it. I kind of eyeball it because it's thick and it'd be hard, but what I love is it gives you that undertone of a depth of flavor. A little bit more of those caramelly notes, which I love. We're gonna mix this up, kind of break up those egg yolks, and just slowly work it together. All the pumpkin, the applesauce, the eggs. And this is what's great about this cake. You don't need to pull out an electric mixer. You can kind of just mix it all in one bowl, and it has that great color, like instantly. Do you not think it's seasonal? Once that's somewhat combined, we can just add a few more flavorings. So I'm gonna add some vanilla because to me, it just needs a little bit of vanilla. And then I'm adding kind of something, it's a little bit interesting, but I still think it's really seasonal, and it's some grated orange zest. I actually love the zest of orange with pumpkin. I think it kind of brings it out, which in general, there is something about orange zest that you can pair it with a lot of different items, and it somehow just kind of helps them sing and helps them, I don't know, just kind of really come out and get the best that you can from them. So I'm using a microplane grater just to get that bright orange part of the peel. I don't want that white pithy part. It can sometimes go bitter. So instead we're just using that really fragrant outside thin peel and getting all those essential oils, which as you do this, they release and you smell them. We're gonna put it right in there. So I do it upside down so I can just knock it all into there and it kind of catches it all, which I like. And then we can move on to our dry ingredients. So we're gonna add some ginger. We're not going full on like pumpkin pie type flavorings here. We have the orange in there. It kind of is waking it up and giving it a fresh flavor, but we are gonna use some ginger and some cinnamon. It's fall, and it really does bring out kind of the best of the pumpkin, I feel. So I'm putting that right in there. And then to that we can add, it's really simple. This is what I love. It's kind of just like a humble, quick, delicious cake. We're gonna add some sugar, just a white granulated sugar. And now, I don't actually oversweeten this. A lot of pumpkin items will have cups of sugar. I think it kind of just drowns it out and you just get the sweetness from it instead of a good flavor. And I really want that orange and the spices to really come out and be the showcase. So we don't wanna oversweeten it. We want it just enough. Then I'm gonna add in my flour. So this is really how it comes together. This is the dry ingredients that are really gonna create a cake. They're really gonna make it have all that goodness you want. We're gonna put in just a little bit more flour here, and that kind of is the best of it. Now, we of course need some baking soda. And sometimes I don't always remember to get everything out when I'm doing this. So sometimes we just have to remember as we go, just like we do in our own kitchen. So I'm putting in some baking soda. For this, the applesauce, the molasses, they both count as acidic ingredients. So they're both gonna help that baking soda bump up and actually help the cake rise. So I'm gonna start mixing this with a whisk, then I'll finish with my spatula and we'll have a cake. In typical Caleb, as I was finishing everything up, guys, you know what, we all do it. I forgot the salt. I gotta put in salt. I had it sitting here and that wasn't enough for me to remember. So always check and recheck your recipe and make sure. Once you have it mixed up, and I don't care if there's just a couple little dry streaks, you just don't want big pockets of flour because then it won't look even once you actually go to bake it. So you just wanna give it a couple turns to make sure there's no lumps, no pieces. And we're gonna pour it into just a cake pan, a simple 1-layer 9-inch cake. I have it greased, and then I put a piece of parchment in the bottom. I always do that just for added protection. That way they never really stick, but you know what? They just come out really clean then, which, why not? So if you don't have pre-cut ones, don't worry. You can just cut a piece of parchment to fit. That's the best part. And it just does. It gives you that little extra something to make sure, and I think those little things, you know, that's what helps you always just have a stress-free experience. You don't have to worry about the cake sticking, which we've all in the past had that, which most cake pans now, they don't really stick. I think they've just manufactured them much better, and they're usually some type of non-stick quality to them, or they're powder coated. But I'm smoothing this out to an even layer. It's gonna be kind of a thick cake, but it's again, just kind of a humble 1 layer, and that's what I love. It's that simple. I made this actually last Thanksgiving for my niece's birthday because her birthday falls kind of close to Thanksgiving, so we always celebrate it around that time. And I think that's the best part of it. You can make it for a birthday, you can make it for a weekday, and that's what I love about it. So once you have it smoothed out, we're gonna pop it in the oven, let it bake. As it's cooling, once it's cool, we're gonna top it with like a 7-minute frosting. What could be wrong with that? Marshmallowy, perfect. It's gonna be good. When the cake was done, I just checked with a big skewer, made sure it came out mostly clean, put it on a cake rack for a while just to cool, and then put it onto whatever I want to serve it on. You can see it's a rustic kind of free-form cake. It has some cracks, and that's what I love about it. It's just very simple. So I want a frosting for it, and what I love is kind of that marshmallowy, just like traditional homemade 7-minute frosting. It's like marshmallow fluff, but better, because it's homemade. So we're gonna take some egg whites. We only want the whites for this. And it's kind of pretty much just like you're making a meringue in essence. And so that's the best part of it. This is kind of, to me, one of the best parts of like an old style frosting. This is, to me, what people used to make a lot because it was pretty simple. You can make it pretty fast. Now, I like to use my hands when I separate eggs. I know, but that's just, you know what? You gotta do what works for you. And for me, I think my hands just sometimes work easier than going back and forth between the shell. Now, if that grosses you out, I wash my hands and it's my kitchen. So I'm gonna finish taking these whites out, and then we'll add a few other ingredients and put it all together. After the egg whites, you add some sugar. Now this is just enough for this cake, but it's gonna be plenty, so it's like billowy, which I love. A little bit of salt, you know, just to balance it out. And then a little bit of corn syrup, not a lot, but what this does is really just help stabilize it, which is what the best part is. So we're gonna whisk this slightly. We're gonna take it over to the stove, set it over just some barely simmering water, and heat it up. You may not be able to see it, but the water is just steaming and just wanting to simmer. You don't want it to touch the bottom because that could cook the egg whites, which we don't want to do. Instead, what we're doing here is just gently melting the sugar into the egg whites, heating it up to 160 degrees, that stabilized point, pulling it off, then we're gonna whip it, and it's gonna be like the best frosting ever. Super simple, but it adds just such a great touch to the cake. So after constant whisking, and I let it come up to 160 degrees, it gets just kind of this airy, you know, white egg mixture. And now we're just gonna whip it. So it's a lot of times like if you've ever made a Swiss meringue before a Swiss meringue buttercream, this is pretty much what we're doing. So I'm just gonna use a hand mixer, whip it up, we'll be good to go. Technically, the frosting is supposed to take 7 minutes, but when it's done, it gets nice and thick and glossy. It holds a stiff peak. I mean, look how beautiful. Look how beautiful that is. So at the very end here, when I just have a little bit left, I add my vanilla, which you can really flavor it with anything you want. You could flavor it with orange, you could flavor it with whatever, but I'm gonna mix that in quickly. We already have it mixed. And it should be down to room temperature at this point too. And there you go. By the way, these are the best beaters ever. Just like marshmallow cream or marshmallow fluff, which there's nothing wrong with that. So here's our 7-minute frosting. And honestly, this is one of those frostings that I love on anything, but look at it. It's kind of a luxurious frosting. I mean, you don't have it all the time, probably for good reason, but it's one that you want to have fresh too. It doesn't always hold the best, but look at how beautiful. I mean, it to me is the best presentation for something that takes no effort. You know, Swiss meringue buttercream, you have to then whip butter into it. This is literally just mix it down to room temperature. You're pretty much done. And look, it takes no work to make it look like it was effort. And it wasn't. Now, if you want to, I just did it for bonus points. You can sugar some orange peel. I just think there's something about it, kind of, you know? Think of some orange peel there on top, just to let you know that there's an orange in it. It's not just a pumpkin cake. It has that orange, which I love when you can let people know what they're eating, what they're gonna enjoy. I think that's the best part of it. It's that great thing that is just, I don't know, it's something special. So I'm gonna cut a piece, you know, because what kind of person would I be if I didn't, you know, at least try it? Oh, and that's the best part. You get that beautiful frosting with it. Ah, a beautiful, moist, dense cake. What I love, you really notice that one, the frosting sticks everywhere on you. It's what it does, but it's worth it because you're eating marshmallow pretty much, fluff. That cake is so, in a sense, rich, but also that orange just elevates it. So you get that pumpkin fall kind of spice with the cinnamon and the ginger, but then the elevation of the orange, and then that frosting on top just gives you that hint of sweetness with a not overly sweet cake, which is exactly what you want. You have that beautiful crumb on it, great moistness to it. Guys, this cake is so delicious. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you share it around. I hope you make it for friends, for family, because that's the point of it. That's what's best. So share this video around, because yeah, it helps me, it helps everyone see. You can have joy in the small things of the everyday, and that's the point. The recipe's on my website, wiseguide.com. Check it out, print it off, use it, share it around. And until next time, enjoy some good food with some good seasonal aspects. That's the fun of it.